Welcome back to Views with Hughes, Agenda Free News. This is Jerome Hughes. Now, let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, Kathleen Kennedy has created once again a flop that we all know, which has been canceled. And now Forbes is destroying Kathleen Kennedy in an article on a newly discovered budget with the Acolyte. Now, Kathleen Kennedy has been at the center of this particular controversy for years, and the latest fiasco, which is this, is no different. Now, Kathleen Kennedy oversaw this project, now being reported as to have overspent to the tune of $230 million under Kathleen Kennedy's leadership. And it doesn't even look like that much money is making its way onto the screen. It's just more of the same from Kathleen Kennedy, constantly promising more than what she would deliver, or as she claimed to deliver. Now, how Kathleen Kennedy allowed this disaster to unfold? Well, Forbes, which typically runs interference for Disney and Kathleen Kennedy, in other words, shilling for them, is now suddenly turning on her. And this time it couldn't be more suspicious. Now, Kathleen Kennedy is at the helm, and, just as Disney is laying off hundreds of employees, they've decided to go ahead and throw the protege Leslye Headland, a Kathleen Kennedy hire, under the bus. Now, it's classic corporate deflection, and guess who's at the center of it? You guessed it, Kathleen Kennedy herself. Now, they're making Kathleen Kennedy's protege look like a scapegoat for this whole woke disaster, which is the Acolyte. But guess what? It doesn't stop there. Now, of course, Kathleen Kennedy is entangled in a legal battle as well because, well, what's a Kathleen Kennedy project without some drama? I mean, Kathleen Kennedy and even Headland herself are facing a lawsuit from producer Leslye McCarthy, as you all remember, who was mysteriously fired from the Acolyte. And now Kathleen Kennedy is in the spotlight as Leslye Headland is set to be deposed. Now, the timing of the Forbes article, which we featured below in the description, couldn't be more convenient for Kathleen Kennedy trying to divert attention from yet another controversy. But we know this better, that this is just another example of Kathleen Kennedy fumbling the ball itself. And speaking of fumbling, we also talk about the numbers itself. Now, under Kathleen Kennedy, Disney has been and Lucasfilm have been, incredibly hush about the budget for the Acolyte, but now we're hearing that it went way over. As you all know, $230 million, people, and you can bet that's a result of Kathleen Kennedy's inability to manage anything properly. It could be due to reshoots or putting priorities other places. Either way, Kathleen Kennedy has been responsible for this massive budget blowouts before, and this is just another notch on her belt. Now, what's even more telling is that Forbes, is confirming the rumors that we've all been hearing, where Kathleen Kennedy is losing control of this project and Bob Iger is using the media to go ahead and destroy Kathleen Kennedy's reputation. Or at least I think so. But no surprise here, given Kathleen Kennedy's own track record. But here's the real kicker. You see, Kathleen Kennedy has been mismanaging, Star Wars for years, and the Acolyte is just the latest example of how Kathleen Kennedy has turned Star Wars into a shadow of its former self. Now, under Kathleen Kennedy's leadership, millions are wasted on these woke projects, and when they inevitably fail, Kathleen Kennedy acts surprised. But we're not surprised at all because, well, we've seen the same thing time and time again with Kathleen Kennedy. Now, she pushes diversity and identity politics at the expense of good storytelling, and the fans aren't buying it anymore. What Kathleen Kennedy is actually selling. And of course, there's also the fact that Kathleen Kennedy's decision to hire Amanda Stenberg, and Kathleen Kennedy signed off on Stenberg not playing not one but two roles in this mess of a show. Now, Stenberg was playing a Jedi, an ex-student, and an evil twin, because apparently that's what Kathleen Kennedy thinks makes a good Star Wars content. And then Kathleen Kennedy brought in Manny Jacinto and Jodie Turner-Smith, who round about the cast, but it's just more woke nonsense from Kathleen Kennedy, as you all know. But Kathleen Kennedy has no idea what the fans actually want, But even with Kathleen Kennedy pulling the strings, I mean, not even the critics could save this train wreck. Now, sure, Kathleen Kennedy's Acolyte had about a strong debut with 4.8 million views, or sort of strong, but on its first two episodes. But under Kathleen Kennedy's leadership, it tanked right after. Now, the show plummeted from being the biggest premiere on Disney Plus to getting kicked out of Nielsen's top 10 in just a few weeks. And why? simply because under Kathleen Kennedy, the show was poorly executed and fans weren't interested in it. And quite frankly, Kathleen Kennedy thought that, she could just throw the Star Wars name on anything, but fans are tired of Kathleen Kennedy's poor decisions. And that showed in the ratings as well. And of course, under Kathleen Kennedy, they're quick to blame review bombing. And it's always the same excuse with Kathleen Kennedy. You see, when something flops, it's because of some imaginary hate mob. But the truth is, Kathleen Kennedy is simply responsible for the failure. Now, when a show has a Rotten Tomatoes audience score of around 18%, that's not review bombing. That's a bad show right there. And that's on Kathleen Kennedy. And meanwhile, the critics are giving it a 78%, showing the massive disconnect between the elite who support Kathleen Kennedy as well as the fans who are done with Kathleen Kennedy's nonsense. I mean, you also see it on social media, the ratings, so on and so forth. But what's really clear here, excuse me, is that Kathleen Kennedy has completely lost touch with what made Star Wars great in the first place. Now, the messaging, the diversity push is not enough to save Kathleen Kennedy's projects anymore. And if you thought that Kathleen Kennedy was going to take responsibility, think again. You see, Bob Iger himself had to step in to fix the mess that Kathleen Kennedy created. Now, he said it at last year's DealBook Summit. Creators need to focus on entertainment, not messaging. Of course, Bob Iger need to go ahead and follow his own advice, but Kathleen Kennedy doesn't get it. And her deception with woke politics is just dragging the Star Wars brand down itself to the point where it's going to be dead or unrecoverable. But there's also the production cost, because this is where Kathleen Kennedy's incompetence really shines. Now, under Kathleen Kennedy, The Acolyte was filmed in Shinfield Studios, whatever it's called, in UK, using the same LED screens as The Mandalorian. But with Kathleen Kennedy in charge, the magic just wasn't there. You see, the financial reports show that The Acolyte employed like 344 production staff, spending $26.8 million on them alone. Now, that's more than any other Star Wars project filmed in the UK. And of course, it's under Kathleen Kennedy's leadership, as well as the tax laws over there. And this is what happens when Kathleen Kennedy is allowed to run wild. Now, all roads lead back to Kathleen Kennedy, people. Now, Kathleen Kennedy has been in charge of Lucasfilm for years, and under her leadership, we've seen nothing but failure, okay? From The Last Jedi on to Solo to Acolyte, and Kathleen Kennedy has turned Star Wars, or Disney Star Wars, into a woke mess that fans no longer recognize. And now Bob Iger has to clean up after Kathleen Kennedy, even with all the subsidies from the UK government. And Kathleen Kennedy still managed to go ahead and overspend and burn through Disney's budget. Now, Kathleen Kennedy is a liability, and it's time that Disney realized that. And let's not forget about, the merchandising disaster that's also on Kathleen Kennedy. Now, all official Acolyte merchandise has been removed from Disney stores and suddenly reappeared there and now removed again. Another blow to Kathleen Kennedy's already shaky reputation. Now, Paul Tassi from Forbes even pointed out that Kathleen Kennedy has been responsible for the decline in the Star Wars merchandising. But, with Kathleen Kennedy in charge, this kind of failure honestly has become the norm. And that's also unfortunate. But people, I'm telling you, this is just the beginning of the fallout from Kathleen Kennedy's disastrous leadership. Now, Kathleen Kennedy and Leslye Headland have created an absolute mess with The Acolyte, and now Disney is finally realizing that they need to pivot away from this kind of content. Now, if Star Wars is going to survive, even though it's dead right now, Kathleen Kennedy needs to be removed from the equation. Now, we need good storytelling, not the woke politics that Kathleen Kennedy is obsessed with. And also, Bob Iger's got to be willing to follow through with his so-called promises as well. So where does that leave us? If you're Bob Iger, you got a massive mess to clean up. And quite frankly, thanks to Kathleen Kennedy. Now, you've got lawsuits, budget disasters, and fans who are furious, all because of, Kathleen Kennedy's poor leadership. And now Bob Iger has to step in and fix what Kathleen Kennedy has broken. And it's not going to be easy at all. So let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Also, be sure to include any additional thoughts you may have this particular topic. If you enjoyed what I shared in this video, go ahead, smash the like button, share far wide across social media. And if you haven't done so already and you enjoyed all the content that I put out there, go ahead, subscribe to the channel, click the bell notification so that way you'll be notified of future uploads and updates. Till then, peace.